Okay, I'm gonna have to check when Hello. Good to see you again. Let me see what I can do about the music. I haven't done a run through of this, but it's supposed to be being relaxing. Hopefully, it blends well with the fireplace. That wasn't the last thing I needed to do. I needed to check the book I'm about to read is public domain or not, because that's important. I'd wager yes, considering the age of Dale. Is it? I don't. I can tell I'm a little razzled at it. That we should be. Oh, the echoing. Oh dear. All good now. Okay, cool. That's something I forget to do every time. I need to have the chat open so I can see if it's like actually playing, because last time the Wi-Fi went out the first 2 minutes of the stream, and I'm glad I caught it quickly by accident, because that would have been a shame if I hadn't. You need to reset it. It doesn't just boot itself back up. So now I need to look out for the echo. How's the fireplace noise and the music? Are either of them overpowering, or are they inflicting it all? We are mainly going to be reading here, so if anything seems distracting from that viewpoint, you're welcome to let me know. As far as what we're reading, we'll probably finish The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, starting with where we left off. The chapter, or this has to be a better term because it's not actually a chapter. Okay, blend as well. We'll keep it then as is. As for where we were in The Prophet, we stopped at the chapter of death, and we were almost all the way through it at that point. Thankfully, it does have it in the table of contents where I need to start for that. Oh, actually, turns out death is the final chapter before the farewell. We were 2 pages away from finishing it. Other than that, we finished the Tao Te Ching, so I probably won't return to that today. We have a collection of Walt Whitman's poems. He's an American writer from after the Civil War era. And for prose, there is House on the Borderland by William Hope Hodgson. He was an Englishman who died in World War I. He was instrumental in the creation of world horror, a genre of horror in which not the apocalypse, but humans in the future dealing with far larger problems than we ever deal with as is. He is also part of the weird horror. He has a seal of approval from H.P. Lovecraft, if you're familiar with that work. Not the similar vein at all. He doesn't deal with a mythos of his own. He does mention ancient gods from mythologies that are well documented, like the Egyptian and Hindu mythologies. He doesn't make his own, per se. It's a collection of, it seems like a diary or journal notes. A man who lives in an isolated area in a very large state, and weird things keep happening. Overall, an interesting read. It's not terribly coherent in that it's like there's one overarching theme other than this house is spooky. Um, but some of the ideas brought about in it are interesting, at least. Then there's the Arabian Nights, or 1001 Nights. It's one of the most important collections of literature to come from the Arabian Peninsula and Persia, along with, shoot, I drew on his name again. Second only to the Quran in terms of its influence and rereadability. How much people quote it, how much influence it's had on the canon of modernity. However, not sure if this one is public domain or not. This version I sure hope it is. Copyright is in 1984, but the translation wasn't. Is a lot of stories in it. It's a huge anthology. Stories brought from most of the old world. It has stories that came from India as well. It's actually contested on whether it began in India, Persia, or Arabia. But we're not getting to it yet. So, there. And we'll return to The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. I think we'll reread the chapter of death and then go into the farewell, and then we'll be done with it. It's on page 80. Okay. Pop. Okay, yeah, that is. Let's checking again. Then Almitra spoke, saying, "We would ask now of death." And he said, "You would know the secret of death, but how shall you find it unless you seek in it the heart of life? The owl, whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day, cannot unveil the mystery of light. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide onto the body of life, for life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. In the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond, and like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, your heart dreams of spring. Trust the dreams, for in them is hidden the gate to eternity. Your fear of death is but the trembling of the shepherd when he stands before the king whose hand is to be laid upon him in honor. Is the shepherd not joyful beneath his trembling that he shall wear the mark of the king? Yet is he not more mindful of his trembling? For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing, but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it might rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing, and when you have reached the mountain top, then you shall begin to climb, and when the earth shall claim your limbs, then you shall truly dance." Thing is, I haven't read the 1001 Nights either. This is, once again, I'll reiterate, a tool for me to put a dent in my backlog of books. You know, maybe I'll read it anyway, and if it gets the copyright strike, it gets the copyright strike, and we'll deal with it from there, but at the very least, I'll have read the book. And now we're in the farewell of Prophet by Khalil Gibran. And now it was evening, and Almitra the seeress said, "Blessed be this day and this place and your spirit that has spoken, And he answered, "Was it I who spoke? Was I not also a listener?" Then he descended the steps of the temple, and all the people followed him. And he reached his ship and stood upon the deck. And facing the people again, he raised his voice and said, "People of Orphalese, the wind bids me leave you. Less hasty am I than the wind, yet I must go. We wanderers, ever seeking the lonelier way, begin no day where we have ended another day. And no sunrise finds us where sunset left us. Even while the earth sleeps, we travel. We are the seeds of the tenacious plant, and it is in our ripeness and our fullness of the heart that we are given to the wind and are scattered. Brief were my days among you, and briefer still the words I have spoken. But should my voice fade in your ears, and my love vanish in your memory, and I will come again. And with a richer heart and lips more yielding to the spirit will I speak. Yea, I shall return with the tide, and though death may hide me, and the greater silence unfold me, yet again will I seek your understanding. And not in vain will I seek, if aught I have said is truth. That truth shall reveal itself in a clearer voice, and in words more kin to your thoughts. I go with the wind, people of Orphalese, but not down into emptiness, and if this day is not a fulfillment of your needs and my love, then let it be a promise till another day. Man's needs change, but not his love, nor his desire that his love should satisfy his needs. Know, therefore, that from the greater silence I shall return. The mist that drifts away at dawn, leaving but dew in the fields, shall rise and gather into a cloud, and then fall down in rain. And not unlike the mist have I been. In the stillness of the night, I have walked in your streets, and my spirit has entered your houses, and your heartbeats were in my heart, and your breath was upon my face, and I knew you all. I knew your journey and your pain, and in your sleep your dreams were my dreams. And oftentimes I was among you, a lake among the mountains. I mirrored the summits in you, and the bending slopes, and even the passing flocks of your thoughts and your desires. And to my silence came the laughter of your children in the streams, and the longing of your youths in the rivers. And when they reached my depth, the streams and the rivers ceased not yet to sing. But sweeter still than laughter, and greater than longing, came to me. It was the boundless in you, the vast man in whom you are all but cells and sinews. He is whose chant all your singing is but a soundless throbbing. It is in the vast man that you are vast, and in beholding him that I beheld you and loved you. For what distances can love reach that are not in that vast sphere? What visions, what expectations, and what presumptions can outsoar that flight? Like in a giant oak tree covered with apple blossoms is the vast man in you. His might binds you to the earth. His fragrance lifts you into space, and in his durability, you are deathless. You have been told that, even like a chain, you are as weak as your weakest link. This is but half the truth. You are also as strong as your strongest link. To measure you by your smallest deed is to reckon the power of the ocean by the frailty of its foam. To judge you by your failures is to cast blame upon the seasons for their inconstancy. Aye, you are like an ocean, and though heavy-grounded ships await the tide upon your shores, yet, even like an ocean, you cannot hasten your tides, and like the seasons you are also. And though in your winter you deny your spring, yet spring, reposing within you, smiles in her drowsiness and is not offended. Think not I say these things in order that you may say the one to the other, "He praised us well, he saw but the good in us." I only speak to you in words of that which you yourselves know in thought. And what is word knowledge but a shadow of wordless knowledge? Your thoughts and my words are waves from a sealed memory that keeps records of our yesterday, and of the ancient days when the earth knew not us nor herself, and of nights when earth was upwrought with confusion, Wise men have come to you to give you their wisdom. I came to take of your wisdom. And behold, I have found that which is greater than wisdom. It is a flame spirit in you, ever gathering more of itself, while you, heedless of its expansion, bewail the withering of your days. It is life in quest of life in bodies that fear the grave. There are no graves here. These mountains and plains are a cradle and a stepping stone. Whenever you pass by the field where you have laid your ancestors, look well thereupon, and you shall see yourselves and your children dancing hand in hand. Verily, you often make a merry without knowing. Others have come to you, to whom, for golden promises made unto your faith, you have given but riches and power and glory. Less than a promise have I given, and yet more generous have you been to me. You have given me a deeper thirsting after life. Surely there is no greater gift to a man than that which turns all his aims into parching lips, and all life into a fountain. And in this lies my honor and my reward, that whenever I come to the fountain to drink, I find the living water itself thirsty, and it drinks me while I drink it. Some of you have deemed me proud and over-shy to receive gifts. Too proud indeed am I to receive wages, but not gifts, and though I have eaten berries among the hills where you would have me sit at your board, and slept in the portico of the temple when you would gladly have sheltered me, yet was it not your loving mindfulness of my days and my nights that made food sweet to my mouth and girdled my sleep with visions? For this I bless you most. You give much, and know not that you give it all. Verily, the kindness that gazes upon itself in a mirror turns to stone, and a good deed that calls itself by tender names becomes the parent to a curse. Some of you have called me aloof, and drunk with my own aloneness, and you have said, he holds counsel with the trees of the forest, but not with men. He sits alone on the hilltops and looks upon our city. True it is that I have climbed the hills and walked in remote places. How could I have seen you save from a great height or a great distance? How can one be indeed near unless he be far? And other among you called on to me, not in words, and they said, Stranger, stranger, lover of unreachable heights, why dwell you among the summits where eagles build their nests? Why seek you the unattainable? What storms would you trap in your net, and what vaporous birds do you hunt in the sky? Come and be one of us. Descend and appease your hunger with our bread, and quench your thirst with our wine. In the solitude of their souls they said these things, but were their solitude deeper, they would have known that I sought but the secret of your joy and your pain, and I hunted only your larger selves that walk the sky. But the hunter was also the hunted, for many of my arrows left my bow only to seek my own breast, and the flyer was also the creeper, for when my wings were spread in the sun, their shadow upon the earth was a turtle. And I, the believer, was also the doubter, for often have I put my finger in my own wound that I might have the greater belief in you and the greater knowledge of you. And it is with this belief and this knowledge that I say, you are not enclosed within your bodies, nor confined to the houses or fields. That which is you dwells above mountains and roves with the wind. It is not a thing that crawls into the sun for warmth or digs holes into darkness for safety, but a free thing, a spirit that envelops the earth and moves in the ether. If these be vague words, then seek not to clear them. Vague and nebulous is the beginning of all things, but not their end. And I fain would have you remember me as a beginning. Life, and all that lives, is conceived in the mist, and not in the crystal. And who knows but a crystal is mist in decay? This would I have you remember in remembering me. That which seems most feeble and bewildered in you is the strongest and most determined. Is it not your breath that has erected and hardened the structure of your bones? And is it not a dream which none of you remember having dreamt, that builded your city and fashioned all there is in it? Could you but see the tides of that breath, you would cease to see all else. and if you could hear the whispering of the dream, you would hear no other sound. But you do not see, nor do you hear, and it is well. The veil that clouds your eyes shall be lifted by the hands that wove it, and the clay that fills your ears shall be pierced by those fingers that kneaded it, and you shall see, and you shall hear. Yet you shall not deplore having known blindness, nor regret having been deaf. For in that day you shall know the hidden purpose in all things, and you shall bless darkness as you would bless light. After saying these things, he looked about him, and he saw the pilot of his ship standing by the helm, and gazing now at the full sails, and now at the distance. And he said, "Patient, over patient is the captain of my ship. The wind blows, and restless are the sails, even the rudders beg direction. Yet quietly my captain awaits my silence. And these my mariners, who have heard the choir of the greater sea, they too have heard me patiently. Now they shall wait no longer. I am ready. The stream has reached the sea, and once more the great mother holds her... The stream has reached the sea, and once more the great mother holds her son against her breast. Fare you well, people of Orphalese. This day has ended. It is closing upon us even as the water lily upon its own tomorrow. What was given to us here we shall keep, and if it suffices not, then again must we come together, and together stretch our hands on to the river, the giver. Forget not that I shall come back to you. A little while, and my longing shall gather dust and foam for another body. A little while, a moment of rest upon the wind, and another woman shall bear me. Farewell to you, and the youth I have spent with you. It was but yesterday we met in the dream. You have snugged to me in my aloneness, and I, your longings, have built a tower in the sky. But now our sleep has fled, and our dream is over, and it is no longer dawn. The noontide is upon us, and our half-waking has turned to a fuller day, and we must part. If in the twilight of memory we should meet once more, we shall speak again together, and you shall sing to me a deeper song. And if our hands should meet another dream, we shall build another tower in the sky." So saying, he made a signal to the seamen, and straightway they weighed anchor, cast the ship loose from its moorings, and they moved eastward. And a cry came from the people, as from a single heart, and it rose into the dusk and was carried out over the sea like a great trumpeting. Only Almitra was silent, gazing after the ship until it had vanished into the mist. And when all people were dispersed, she still stood alone upon the seawall, remembering in her heart his saying, "A little while, a moment of rest upon the wind, and another woman shall bear me." And that's the end of Prophet by Khalil Gibran. A Lebanese American, not Renaissance man, but very talented. He did poetry, he did prose similar to Prophet, obviously, his most well-known work. But he was also a painter and a sketcher as well. Drawer, sketcher. A drawer. He drew, he sketched. Either way. I'm a little hesitant to go into the Walt Whitman because I haven't read any of his works before. I also haven't read 1001 Nights before. I have read The House on the Borderland. But maybe I should save that for October since that's supposed to be the scary month. Bide my time with 1001 Nights, but I'll be reading a lot. So it's a very big, it's a tome even. We'll go there. Oh, before I start with it though, I definitely need a bookmark. Where shall we? guess this. Whoa, my bad. So I'll give this deck to the bookmarks. It'll have to do. It's fine. I don't exactly like how this deck looks. It's playing cards. Make perfect book. Guess I'll keep a few out just in case I want to book more than one thing. Two of clubs is our first. And I will preface this with saying I'm probably not going to pronounce every name right on the first try. A lot of them are ancient, and it's very different from English, so if I do mess it up, I will try and correct it by looking it up afterward and seeing what I need to fix. First, I need to find the opening page. I don't want to read any introductions because those are generally the part that's considered copyright in a book that has old stories in it. It's the unique part, and so they can actually get a copyright. It looks like the first story starts on page 6. Just hope that the translation is unique enough. It's not an issue. You know, I might just look it up. I might just double check that this book is in fact. And it entered the public domain in 2010. 1001 Nights, commonly called the Arabian Nights Entertainment. My book almost has that title. I may download it and look at it and see if it's style is same story. Let us see what stories come inside. Going out to hunt the ornamental boar. The Vizier presenting the letter to Shah-Zaman. Shah-Zaman after having killed his wife. It seems I picked up an incomplete copy of 1001 Nights. That's disappointing. I thought I got the actual one. It seems to jump and skip about the pages. Let's see. When does Sherazad come here? Oh, I actually have far less than 1,000 tales in this book. It's maybe only 200 of them at most. That's... wow, and this book is really big too. Jeez. Goodness. enough stalling, I suppose. We're 38 minutes into the session, and we have finished the prophet. Move on to the Arabian Nights. The story of the ass, the ox, and the laborer. A very rich merchant had the gift of understanding the languages of beasts, but with this condition that, on pain of death, he should reveal to nobody what they said, and this hindered him from communicating to others the knowledge he thus acquired. He had in the same stall an ox and an ass, and one day, as he sat near them, he heard the ox say to the ass, "Oh, how happy do I think you when I consider the ease you enjoy and the little labor that is required of you. Your greatest business is to carry our master when he has a short journey to make, and were it not for that, you would be perfectly idle. I am treated in quite a different manner, and my condition is as miserable as yours is pleasant. It is scarce daylight when I am fastened to a plow, and the laborer, who is always behind me, beats me continually. And after having toiled from morning to night, when I am brought in, they give me nothing to eat but dry beans, and when I have satisfied my hunger with this trash, I am forced to lie all night upon filthy straw, so that you see I have reason to envy your lot." The ass answered, "They do not lie who call you a foolish beast. You kill yourself for the ease, profit, and pleasure of those who give you no thanks for so doing. They would not treat you so if you had as much courage as strength. When they come to fasten you to your stall, why do you not strike them with your horns? Nature has furnished you with the means to procure for your self-respect, but you do not make use of them. They bring you only sorry beans and bad straw. Eat none of these, only smell it and leave them. If you follow the advice I give you, you will quickly find a change in your condition, for which you will thank me." The ox took the ass's advice in very good part, and professed himself much obliged for the good counsel. After this discourse, of which the merchant lost not a word, they held their peace. Next morning, the laborer fastened the ox to the plow, and led him off to his usual work. The ox was very troublesome all that day, and in the evening, when the laborer brought him back to the stall, the vicious beast was restive, and ran at the laborer, as if he would have pushed him with his horns. In a word, he did all that the ass advised him to do. Next day, the laborer, finding the manger still full of beans, and the ox lying on the ground with his legs stretched out and panting in a strange manner, believed the beast was sick, and, pitying him, acquainted the merchant with the fact. The merchant, perceiving that the ox had followed the mischievous advice of the ass, ordered the laborer to go and put the ass in the ox's place, and to be sure to work him hard. The laborer did so. The ass was forced to draw the plow all that day. Besides, he was so soundly beaten that he could scarcely stand when he came back. Meanwhile, the ox was very well satisfied. He ate up all that was in the stall, and rested the whole day, and did not fail to compliment the ass for his advice when he came back. The ass answered not one word, so angry was he at the treatment he had received. But he said within himself, "By my own imprudence, I have brought this misfortune upon myself, and if I cannot contrive some way to get out of it, I am certainly undone." And as he spoke thus, his strength was so much exhausted that he fell down in his stall, half dead. The merchant was curious to know what had passed between the ass and the ox. Therefore he went out and sat down by them, and his wife was with him. When he arrived, he heard the ass say to the ox, "Comrade, tell me, I pray you, what do you intend to do tomorrow when the laborer brings you meat?" "What shall I do?" said the ox. "I shall continue to do as you taught me." "Beware of that," replied the ass. "It will ruin you. For as I came home this evening, I heard the merchant, our master, say to the laborer, 'Since the ox does not eat and is not able to work, I will have killed him tomorrow. Therefore, do not fail to send for the butcher.' "This is what I had to tell you," said the ass. "The concern I have for your safety and my friendship for you obliged me to let you know it, and to give you new advice. As soon as they bring your bran and straw, rise up and eat heartily. Our master will by this think you are cured, and no doubt will recall his orders for killing you, whereas if you do otherwise, you are certainly gone." This discourse had the effect which the ass designed. The merchant, who had listened very attentively, burst into such a fit of laughter that his wife was surprised at it, and said, "Pray, husband, tell me what you laugh at so heartily, that I may laugh with you." "Wife," said he, "I only laugh at what our ass just now said to our ox. The matter is a secret which I am not allowed to reveal." "And what hinders you from revealing the secret?" asked she. "If I tell you," replied he, "it will cost me my life." "If you do not tell me what the ox and the ass said to one another," cried his wife, "I swear by heaven that you and I shall never live together again." Having spoken thus, she went into the house in great anger, and sitting down in the corner, she cried there all night. Her husband, finding next morning that she continued in the same humor, told her she was a very foolish woman, to afflict herself in that manner. "I shall never cease weeping," said she, "till you have satisfied my curiosity." "But I tell you very seriously," replied he, "that it will cost me my life if I yield to your indiscretion." "Let what will happen," said she. "I insist upon knowing this matter." "I perceive," said the merchant, "that it is impossible to bring you to reason, and since I foresee that you will procure your own death by your obstinacy, I will call in your children. They may see you before you die." Accordingly, he called for them, and sent for her father and mother, and other relations. When they heard the reason of their being called for, they did all they could to convince her that she was in the wrong, but she told them that she would rather die than yield that point to her husband. The merchant was like a man out of his senses, and almost ready to risk his own life to save that of his wife, whom he loved dearly. Now this merchant had 50 hens and a cock with a dog that gave good heed to all that passed, and while the merchant was considering what he should do, he saw his dog run towards the cock, who was crowing lustily, and heard him speak thus: "You, cock, I am sure, will not be allowed to live long. Are you not ashamed to be so merry today?" "And why," said the cock, "should I not be merry today as well on other days?" "If you do not know," replied the dog, "then I will tell you that this day our master is in great affliction. His wife would have him reveal a secret, which is of such a nature that its discovery will cost him his life." The cock answered the dog thus: "What, has our master so little sense? He has but one wife, and cannot govern her? And though I have 50, I make them all do what I please. Let him make use of his reason. He will speedily find a way to rid himself of his trouble." "How?" asked the dog. "What would you have him do?" "Let him go into the room where his wife is," replied the cock. "Lock the door, and take a good stick and beat her well, and I will answer for it that I will bring her to her senses, and make her forbear asking him any more to reveal what he ought not tell her." The merchant had no sooner heard what the cock said than he took up a good stick, went to his wife, whom he found still crying, and, shutting the door, belabored her so soundly that she cried out, "It is enough, husband, it is enough. Let me alone. I will never ask the question more." "Daughter," added the Grand Vizier, "you deserve to be treated as the merchant treated his wife." "Father," replied Scheherazade, "I beg you will not take it ill that I persist in my opinion." That's a bit of a jump. Something about the... Oh, you're wrong. Oh, isn't that the second tale from the book? Am I in the second tale? Oh dear. I thought I only skipped the introduction, but maybe I skipped a story. Sorry, I was reading that for a while. I don't know when you typed that. Yeah, I don't know about reading this book. It's an incomplete anthology, which is kind of upsetting for something as great as 1001 Nights. Well, shucks. Yeah, my understanding of how the 1001 Nights starts is, at least it tells you how Sherazade got into the predicament she's in. I guess I didn't really explain what is going on here. I think you're reading things. Maybe I am, but okay. As a preface for not reading the introduction, because the introduction is copyrighted, but the stories aren't, 1001 Nights goes over the life of Sherazade. There's a tribeman who, I forget the exact details, but he's killing the women of a village, and eventually it comes to Sherazade. Yeah, what was the reason he was killing the women? I have no recollection of that, but he would bed them and then kill them the next day. Sherazade made her life go on by reciting tales. She wouldn't finish them the first night, and so she would string him along, and she did this for 1001 nights, saving her life and her sister's life, because I believe it was kind of that thing people would recognize Hunger Games for, of one sister volunteering for another. Anyway, so Sherazade is in the home of this man, this king, who will kill her if she ceases to entertain him. And so she's reciting the story of the ass, the ox, and the laborer. We now fall out of the tale and see discourse between Sherazade and primary. The message for Hodgson. Thou will post it. Oh, I see. You posted something. And my auto mod seems to not like it for misogyny, because it's a quote from the book. The primary story is about Shahryar and Sherazade. When Shahryar discovers that his queen is at the beginning of the tale, is being unfaithful, he declares that all women are the same, and vows to take a new bride each night, have her killed the next morning. Yes. Yet an unfaithful woman takes a new woman each night, kills them, and we eventually get to Sherazade, whose name is very close to... Oh no, that's not the name of the... I don't know the name of the queen. Chat paused due to scroll in my own thing. I'm gonna press allow because it's a quotation. It's fine. It's from the story. The whole idea is that, I mean, the main idea of the story goes against that. There is the main protagonist is a woman of extreme skill who weaves her way out of a death sentence by telling stories for 3 years straight. I think that's commendable. Okay. We're on the falling out of the tale. Well, maybe this story is a preface to the beginning. We'll find out as we read. Father, replied Sherazade, I beg you will not take it ill that I persist in my opinion. I am in no way moved by the story of that woman. In short, the father, overcome by the resolution of his daughter, yielded to her importunity, and though he was very much grieved that he could not divert her from her fatal resolution, he went that minute to inform the Sultan that next night he would bring him Sherazade. The Sultan was much surprised at the sacrifice which the Grand Vizier proposed making. How could you resolve, said he, to bring me your own daughter? Sir, answered the Vizier, it is her own offer. But do not deceive yourself, Vizier, said the Sultan. Tomorrow, when I put Scheherazade into your hands, I expect you will take away her life, and if you fail, I swear that you shall die. Scheherazade. Ah, see you in a bit. We will continue reading. 1001 Nights. Scheherazade now set upon preparing to appear before the Sultan. But before she went, she took her sister, Dinarzade, apart and said to her, "My dear sister, I have need of your help in a matter of great importance. Must pray you do not deny it me. As soon as I come to the Sultan, I will beg him to allow you to be in the bride chamber, that I may enjoy your company for the last time. If I obtain this favor, as I hope to do, remember to awaken me tomorrow in an hour before day, and to address me in words like these. My sister, if you be not asleep, I pray you that, till daybreak, you will relate one of your delightful stories of which you have read so many. Immediately I will begin to tell you one, and I hope by these means to deliver the city from the consternation it is in." Dinarzade answered that she would fulfill her sister's wishes. That's my spot. When the hour for retiring came, the Grand Vizier conducted Scheherazade to the palace and took his leave. As soon as the Sultan was left alone with her, he ordered her to uncover her face, and found it so beautiful that he was charmed with her. But perceiving her to be in tears, he asked her the reason. "Sir," answered Scheherazade, "I have a sister who loves me tenderly, and whom I love, and I could wish that she might be allowed to pass the night in this chamber, that I might see her and bid her farewell. Will you be pleased to grant me the comfort of giving her this last testimony of my affection?" Shahryar, the Sultan, having consented, Dinarzade was sent for, and came with all diligence. The Sultan passed the night with Scheherazade upon an elevated couch, and Dinarzade, there's not a Dinara, it's Dinarzade, and Dinarzade slept on a mattress prepared for her near the foot of the bed. An hour before day, Dinarzade awoke, and failed not to speak as her sister had ordered her. Scheherazade, instead of answering her sister, asked leave of the Sultan to grant Dinarzade's request. Shahryar consented, and desiring her sister to attend, and addressing herself to the Sultan, Scheherazade began as follows. Now I'm extremely confused why the story starts as it does. Yeah. Let's see. Should I know? No. I've been still. Sounding. Enough, husband. Leave me alone, and I will never ask a question more. Daughter, added the Grand Vizier, you deserve to be treated as the merchant treated his wife. So it's a story begins with a story. The Vizier is chastising Scheherazade for her sacrifice towards the Sultan, for choosing herself as the next target of his murder of this village. See how the music's going. Almost done. I put it on shuffle. Enable repeat. And we're gonna So I'll take this time to figure out what the stream actually sounds like. Use my bookmark, and I'm going to unplug the mic and see what the sound sounds like for viewers instead of me. To get the wire. Music is very quiet. Fireplace is at a decent volume, I think. Yeah, it's ambient. It's good enough. And alright, we'll call it good there. Try this again. Alright, we're ready to start reading again. Did not stop. Okay. When the hour for retiring came, the Grand Vizier conducted Scheherazade to the palace and took his leave. As soon as the Sultan was left alone with her, he ordered her to uncover her face. No, we already read that. Lovers me tenderly an hour before the day. Will not? Okay. We are now at the first story of Shehrazade's retelling. That entire first story was the Grand Vizier. Possibly? It doesn't say who was actually reading the story, but it is interjected by the Vizier, saying that he should beat his daughter for this. I don't know. Oh well. I'm just looking at the chat. So since I omitted the term, or the quotation was flagged, because of the line, all women are the same. And now, the auto mod thinks that it's just, it says I have added the permitted term, all women are the same, and I'm a little concerned about what my auto mod is gonna do now. It's fine, it's not like chat's blowing up or anything. Get that out. I'll have to figure out how to unadd that term. I'll just have to maybe read those quotes out loud. That kind of thing doesn't sneak into the chat. Anyways, we continue. The story of the merchant and the genie. Sir, there was formerly a merchant who had great estate in lands, goods, and money. He had numbers of deputies, factors, and slaves. One day, being under necessity of going a long journey, he mounted his horse, put a wallet behind him with some biscuits and dates, because he had to pass over a great desert where he could procure no provisions. He arrived without accident at the end of his journey, and having dispatched his business, took horse again in order to return home. On the 4th day of his journey, being in want of refreshment, he alighted from his horse, and sitting down by a fountain, took some biscuits and dates out of his wallet, and as he ate the dates, he threw the stones about on all sides. When he had done eating, being a good Mussulman, he washed his hands, his face, his feet, and said his prayers. He was still on his knees when he saw a genie appear, white with age and of enormous stature. The monster advanced towards him, scimitar in hand, and spoke to him in a terrible voice thus: "Rise up, that I may kill thee, as thou hast killed my son." The merchant, frightened at the hideous shape of the giant, answered, "How can I have slain thy son? I do not know him, nor have I ever seen him." "What?" replied the genie. "Didst thou not take dates out of thy wallet, and after eating them, didst thou not throw the shells on all sides?" "I do not deny it," answered the merchant. Then said the genie, "I tell thee, thou hast killed my son. And the way was thus. When thou threwest the date stones, my son was passing by, and one of them was flung into his eye and killed him. Therefore I must kill thee." "Ah, my lord, pardon me," cried the merchant, "for if I killed thy son accidentally, therefore suffer me to live." "No, no," said the genie, "I must kill thee, since thou hast killed my son." The genie then threw the merchant upon the ground and lifted up the scimitar to cut off his head. When Scheherazade spoke these words, she perceived it was day, and knowing that the Sultan rose betimes in the morning, she held her peace. "O sister," said Dinarzade, "what a wonderful story is this!" "The remainder of it," said Scheherazade, "is more surprising, and you will be of my mind, if the Sultan will let me live this day, and permit me to continue the story tonight." Shahryar, who had listened to Scheherazade with pleasure, said to himself, "I will stay till tomorrow, or I can have at any time put her to death when she has made an end of her story. So having resolved to defer her death till the following day, he arose. Having prayed, went to the council. The Grand Vizier. I'm going to look up how to pronounce that word, feeling I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. Vizier. Pronunciation. I think I might have to remove the ASMR tag. Vizier. Vizier. I forgot how to read IPA. Oh no. Vizier or Vizier. I like Vizier. There's more than one pronunciation allowed. Or maybe this book is in the correct order. I really should research all this prior to actually reading. We live and learn. The Grand Vizier, in the meantime, was in a state of cruel suspense. Unable to sleep, he passed the night in lamenting the approaching fate of his daughter, whose executioner he was destined to be. How great was his surprise when the Sultan entered the council chamber without giving him the horrible order he expected. The Sultan spent the day, as usual, in regulating the affairs of the kingdom, and on the approach of night retired with Scheherazade to his apartment. Buffering issues had like should be fine now. Where were we? We were there. Before the day appeared, Dinarzade did not fail to address her sister. "My dear sister," she said, "if you are not asleep, I entreat you, before the morning breaks, to continue your story." The Sultan did not wait for Scheherazade to ask permission, but said, "Finish the tale of the genie and the merchant. I am curious to hear the end of it." Scheherazade immediately went on as follows. "Sir, when the merchant perceived that the genie was about to slay him, he cried, 'One word more, I entreat thee. Have the goodness to grant me a little delay. Give me only time to go and take leave of my wife and children, and divide my estate among them, as I have not yet made my will. And when I have set my house in order, I promise to return to this spot and submit myself to thee.' 'But if I grant thee the respite thou askest,' replied the genie, 'I fear thou wilt not return. I swear by the God of heaven and earth that I will not fail to repair hither.' 'What length of time requirest thou?' said the genie. 'It will take me a full year to arrange everything, but I promise thee that after 12 months have passed, thou shalt find me under these trees, waiting to deliver myself into thy hands.' On this, Genie left him near the fountain, immediately disappeared. The merchant, having recovered from his fright, mounted his horse and continued his journey. But, if on the one hand he rejoiced at the escaping for the moment from the great present peril, he was, on the other, much distressed when he recollected the fatal oath he had taken. On his arrival at home, his wife and family received him with signs of the greatest joy, but instead of returning their embraces, he wept so bitterly they supposed something very extraordinary had happened. His wife inquired the cause of his tears and of his violent grief. "We were rejoicing," she said, "at your return, and you alarm us all by the state of mind we see you in. I entreat you to explain the cause of your sorrow." "Alas," he replied, "how should I feel cheerful when I only have a year to live?" He then related to them what had passed, and that he had been given his word to return, and at the end of the year to submit to his death. When they heard this melancholy tale, they were in despair. The wife uttered the most lamentable groans, tearing her hair and beating her breast. Children made the house resound with their grief, while the father mingled his tears with theirs. The next day, the merchant began to settle his affairs, and first of all to pay his debts. He made many presents to his different friends, and large donations to the poor. He set at liberty many of his slaves of both sexes, divided his property among his children, appointed guardians for those of tender age. To his wife he returned all the fortune she brought him, and added as much more as the law would permit. The years soon passed away, and he was compelled to depart. He took in his wallet his grave clothes, but when he attempted to take leave of his wife and children, his grief quite overcame him. They could not bear his loss, and almost resolved to accompany him, and all perished together. Compelled at length to tear himself away, he addressed them in these words: "In leaving you, my children, I obey the command of God. Imitate me, and submit with fortitude to this necessity. Remember that to die is the inevitable destiny of man." Having said this, he snatched himself away from them and set out. He arrived at the destined spot on the very day he had promised. He got off his horse, and seating himself by the side of the fountain, with such sorrowful sensations as may easily be imagined, waited the arrival of the genie. While he was kept in this cruel suspense, there appeared an old man leading a hind. Hint? The word I don't quite know. What is a hind or a hind? How do you lead a hind? Lead a hind. Is it a horse? It's a horse. What is... a female deer? You have several large edible groupers, so either a fish or a deer. Okay. Well, deer seems more likely in the context we're in, but still not likely because it's, the desert. Well. What do we make of this? While he was kept in this cruel suspense, there appeared an old man, leading a hind, who came near to him. When they had saluted each other, the old man said, "May I ask of you, brother, what brought you to this desert place which is so full of evil genii, that there is no safety? From the appearance of these trees, one might suppose this spot was uninhabited. It is, in fact, a solitude where to tarry is dangerous." The merchant satisfied the old man's curiosity and related his adventure. The old man listened with astonishment to the account, and when it was ended, he said, "Surely nothing in the world can be more surprising, and you have kept your oath inviolate. In truth, I should like to be a witness to your interview with the genie." Having said this, he sat down near the merchant, and while they were talking, another old man followed by 2 black dogs appeared. As soon as he was near enough, he saluted them, and inquired the reason of their stay in that place. The first old man related to the adventure of the merchant exactly as the other had told it, and added that this was the appointed day, and therefore he was determined to remain to see the event. The second old man, who also thought it was very curious, resolved to stay likewise, and sitting down, joined in the conversation. He was hardly seated when a third arrived, and addressing himself to the other 2, asked why the merchant who was with them appeared so melancholy. They related the cause, which seemed to the newcomer so wonderful that he also resolved to be witness. He also resolved to be witness. I lost the spot. Also resolved to witness to what passed between the genie and the merchant. He therefore sat down with them for this purpose. He perceived towards the plain a thick vapor or smoke, like a column of dust raised by the wind. This vapor approached them, and on its sudden disappearance they saw the genie who, without noticing them, went towards the merchant with his scimitar in hand and taking him by the arm, cried, "Get up, that I may kill thee as thou hast slain my son." The merchant and the 3 old men were so horrified that they began to weep and filled the air with their lamentations. When the old man, who laid the hind, saw the genie lay hold of the merchant and about to murder him without mercy, he threw himself at the monster's feet, and kissing them said, "Prince of the Genie, I humbly entreat you to abate your rage, and to do me the favor to listen to me. I wish to relate my own history, and that of the hind which you see here, and if you find it more wonderful and surprising than the adventure of this merchant whose life you wish to take, may I not hope that you will at least remit a 3rd part of the punishment of this unfortunate man?" After meditating for some time, the genie answered, "Good. I agree to it. I am now going," said he, "to begin my tale, and I request your attention. The hind you see here is my cousin, nay more, she is my wife. When I married her, she was only 12 years old, and she ought therefore to look upon me not only as her relation and husband, but even as her father. We lived together 30 years without having any children. This, however, did not decrease my kindness and regard for her. Still, my desire for an heir was so great that I purchased a female slave who bore me a son of great promise and beauty. Soon afterwards, my wife was seized with jealousy and consequently took a great aversion to both mother and child. She so well concealed her feelings that I, alas, never had suspicion of them till too late. In the meantime, my son grew up, and he was about 10 years old when I was obliged to make a journey. Before my departure, I recommended both the slave and the child to my wife, whom I trusted implicitly, and begged her to take care of them during my absence, which would last not less than a year. Now was the time she endeavored to gratify her hatred. She applied herself to the study of magic, and when she was sufficiently skilled in that diabolical act to execute the horrible design she meditated, the wretch carried my son to a distant place. There... Sorry, one second. Just checking the internet. We're good. The wretch had carried my son to a distant place. There, by her enchantments, she changed him into a calf, and, giving the creature to my steward, told him it was a purchase of hers, and ordered him to rear it. Not satisfied even with this infamous action, she changed the slave into a cow, which she also sent to my steward. Immediately on my return, I inquired after my child and his mother. "Your slave is dead," said she, "and it is not more than 2 months since I have beheld your son, nor do I know what has become of him." I was deeply affected at the death of the slave, but as my son had only disappeared, I consoled myself with the hope that he would soon be found. After 8 months, however, he did not return, nor could I learn any tidings of him. The festival of the great Bairam was approaching. To celebrate it, I ordered my steward to bring me the fattest cow I had for a sacrifice. He obeyed my commands, and the cow he brought was my own slave, the unfortunate mother of my son. Having bound her, I was about to offer her up, but she lowed most sorrowfully, and tears even fell from her eyes. This seemed to me so extraordinary that I could not but feel compassion for her, and I was unable to strike the fatal blow. I therefore ordered that she be taken away, and another cow brought. My wife, who was present, seemed angry at my compassion and resisted an order which defeated her malice. "What are you about, husband?" said she. "Why not sacrifice this cow?" Your steward has not a more beautiful one, nor one more proper for the purpose. Wishing to oblige my wife, I again approached the cow, and struggling with the pity that held my hand, I was again going to give the mortal blow, when the victim, a second time, disarmed me by her renewed tears and moanings. I then delivered the instruments into the hands of my steward. "Take them," I cried, "and perform the sacrifice yourself, for the lamentations and tears of the animal have overcome me." The steward was less compassionate than I. He sacrificed her. On taking off her skin, we found her greatly emaciated, though she had appeared very fat. "Take her away," said I, to the steward, greatly mortified. "To you, to do as you please with. Feast upon her with any friend you choose. And if you have a very fat calf, bring it in her place." I did not inquire what he did with the cow, but he had not been gone long before a remarkably fine calf was brought out. Although I was ignorant that this calf was my own son, yet I felt a sensation of pity arise in my breast at the first sight of him. As soon as he perceived me, he made so great an effort to come to me that he broke his cord. He lay down at my feet with his head on the ground, as if he endeavored to seek my compassion and would beg me not to have the cruelty to take away his life. He was striving in this manner to make me understand that he was my son. I was still more surprised and affected by this action than I had been by the tears of the cow. I felt a kind of tender pity and a great interest for him, or to speak more correctly, nature guided me that it was my duty. "Go back," I cried, "and take all possible care of this calf, and in its stead bring me another directly." So soon as my wife heard this, she exclaimed, "What are you about, husband? Do not, I pray you, sacrifice any calf but this." "Wife," answered I will not sacrifice him. I wish to preserve him, therefore do not oppose it." This wicked woman, however, did not agree to my wish. She hated my son too much to suffer him to remain alive, and she continued to demand his death so obstinately that I was compelled to yield. I bound the calf, and taking the fatal knife was going to bury it in the throat of my son, when he turned his tearful eyes so persuasively upon me that I had no power to execute my intention. The knife fell from my hand, and I told my wife I was determined to have another calf brought. She tried every means to induce me to alter my mind. I continued firm, however, in my resolution, in spite of all she could say, promising, in order to appease her, to sacrifice this calf at the feast of Bayram on the following year. The next morning my steward desired to speak with me in private. "I am come," said he, "to give you some information which I trust will afford you pleasure. I have a daughter who has some little knowledge of magic, and yesterday I was bringing back the calf which you were unwilling to sacrifice. I observed that she smiled on seeing it, and the next moment began to weep. I inquired of her the cause of such contrary emotions. 'My dear father,' she said, 'that calf which you bring back is the son of our master.' I smiled at joy at seeing him still alive, and wept at the recollection of his mother, who was yesterday sacrificed in the shape of a cow. These two metamorphoses have been contrived by the enchantments of our master's wife, who hated both the mother and the child. This," continued the steward, "is what my daughter said, and I come to report it to you. Imagine, O Genie, my surprise at the hearing these words. I immediately went with my steward to speak to his daughter myself. I went first to the stable where the calf had been placed. He could not return my caresses, but he received them in a way which convinced me that he really was my son. When the daughter of the steward made her appearance, I asked her if she could restore the poor creature to his former shape. "Yes," replied she, "I can." "Ah," exclaimed I, "if you can perform such a miracle, I will make you the mistress of all I possess." Then she answered with a smile, "You are our master, and I know how much we are bound to you, but I must mention that I can restore your son to his own form only on 2 conditions. Firstly, that you bestow him upon me for my husband, and secondly, that I may be permitted to punish her who changed him into a calf. More, I will give you." Oh, I skipped a line. "To the first condition," I replied, "I agree with all my heart. I will do still more. I will give you, for your own separate use, a considerable sum of money, independent of what I destine for my son. You shall perceive that I properly value the important service you do me. I agree also to the stipulation concerning my wife, for a horrible crime like this is worthy of punishment. I abandon her to you. Do what you please with her. I only entreat you to spare her life." "I will treat her," she said, "as she has treated your son. To this I give my consent, provided she first restored me my son." The damsel then took a vessel full of water, and pronouncing it over some words I did not understand, she addressed the calf. "O calf, if thou hast been created as thou now appearest, by the all-powerful sovereign of the world, retain that form, but if thou art a man, and hast been changed by enchantment into a calf, reassume thy natural figure." As she said this, she threw the water over him, and he instantly regained his own form. "My child, my dear child," I exclaimed, "it is Allah who hath sent this damsel to us to destroy that horrible charm which you were enthralled, and to avenge you, and to accept her for a wife, as I have already promised for you." He joyfully consented, but before they were united, the damsel changed my wife into this hind, which you see here. I wished her to have this form in preference to any other, that we might see her without repugnance in our family. Since that time, my son has become a widower, and is now traveling. Many years have passed since I have heard anything of him. I have therefore now set with a view to gain some information, and as I did not like to trust my wife to the care of anyone during my absence, this is the history of myself and the hind. Can anything be more wonderful? "I agree with you," said the genie, "and in consequence, I remit to this merchant 1/3 of his penalty." As soon as the first old man finished his story, continued Scheherazade, the second, who led the 2 black dogs, said to the genie, "I will tell you what has happened to me, and to these 2 dogs, which you see here, and I am sure you will find my history still more astonishing than that which you have heard. But when I have told it, will you forgive this merchant another 1/3 of his penalty?" "Yes," answered the genie, "provided your history surpass that of the hind." This being settled, the second old man began as follows. "Great prince of the genie, you must know that these 2 black dogs, which you see here, are myself. And, what a line to mess up. That these 2 dogs here and myself are 3 brothers. Our father left us when he died, 1,000 sequins each. With this sum we all embarked in the same calling, namely as merchants. Soon after we opened our warehouse, my eldest brother, who is now one of these dogs, resolved to travel. and carry on his business in foreign countries. With this view, he sold all his goods and bought such kind of merchandise as was adapted to the different lands he proposed visiting. He departed and was absent a whole year. At the end of that time, a poor man, who seemed to me to be asking charity, presented himself at my warehouse. "God help you," said I. "And you also," answered he. "It is possible you do not know me." On looking attentively at him, I recognized my brother. "Ah, my brother," I cried, embracing him, "how should I possibly know you in the state you are in?" I made him come in directly and inquired concerning his health and the success of his voyage. "Do not ask me," he replied. "You behold in me a token of my fate. To enter into a detail of all the misfortunes that I have suffered in the last year, and which have reduced me to the state you see, would only be to renew my affliction." I instantly shut up my shop, and putting aside all my own to the bath, and dressed in the best apparel my wardrobe afforded the state of my business, and finding by my accounts that I doubled my capital, and that I was worth in sequins, I presented him with half my fortune. "Let this, my brother," I said, "make you forget your losses." He joyfully accepted the 1,000 sequins, again settled his affairs, and we lived together as we had done before. Some time after this, my second brother, the other of these two black dogs, wished also to depose of his property. Both his elder brother and myself tried every means in our power to dissuade him from his intention, but in vain. He sold all, and with the money he bought such merchandise as he considered proper for his journey. He took his departure and joined a caravan. At the end of the year he also returned, as destitute as his brother had been. I furnished him with clothes, and as I had gained another 1,000 sequins, I gave them to him. He directly bought a shop and continued to carry on his business. One day my brothers came to me and proposed that I should make a voyage with them for the purpose of traffic. At first I opposed to their scheme. "You have traveled," said I, "and what have you gained? Who will ensure that I shall be more fortunate than you?" In vain did they use every argument they thought could induce me to try my fortune. I still refused to consent to their design. They returned, however, so often to the subject that, after withstanding their solicitations for 5 years, I at length yielded. When it became necessary to prepare for the voyage, and we were consulting on the sort of merchandise to be bought, I discovered that they had consumed their capital, and that nothing remained of the 1,000 sequins I had given to each. I did not, however, reproach them. On the contrary, as my fortune had increased to 6,000 sequins, I divided the half with them, saying, "We must, my brothers, risk only 3,000 sequins, and endeavor to conceal the rest in some secure place, so that if our voyage be not more successful than the ventures you have already made, we shall be able to console ourselves with what we have left and resume our former profession. I will give 1,000 sequins to each of you, keep 1,000 myself, and I will conceal the other 3,000 in a corner of my house." We purchased our goods. After sailing about a month, we arrived without any accident at a port, where we landed and disposed of our merchandise with great advantage. I, in particular, sold mine so well that I gained 10 sequins for one. We then purchased the produce of the country we were in order to traffic it within our own. About the time when we were ready to embark for our return, I accidentally met on a seashore a woman, very handsome but poorly dressed. She accosted me by kissing my hand, entreated me most earnestly to permit her to go with me, and besought me to take her for my wife. I pleaded many difficulties against such a plan, but at length she said so much to persuade me, urging that I ought not regard her poverty, and assuring me I should be well satisfied with her conduct, that I was entirely overcome. I directly procured proper dresses for her, and when I had married her in due form, she embarked with me and we set sail. During our voyage, I found my wife possessed of so many good qualities that I loved her every day more and more. In the meantime, my two brothers, who had not traded so advantageously as myself, and who were jealous of my prosperity, began to feel exceedingly envious. Lost my spot? Where was I? Oh. They even went so far as to conspire against my life, and one night, while my wife and I were asleep, they threw us into the sea. My wife proved to be a fairy, consequently, she possessed supernatural power. You may therefore imagine she was not hurt. As for me, I should certainly have perished but for her aid. I had hardly, however, fallen into the water before she took me up and transported me to an island. As soon as it was day, the fairy thus addressed me. You may observe, my husband, that in saving your life, I have not badly rewarded the good you have done me. You must know that I am a fairy. I saw you upon the shore when you were about to sail and felt a great regard for you. I wished to try the goodness of your heart, and therefore I presented myself before you in the disguise you saw. You acted most generously, and I am delighted to find an opportunity of showing my gratitude. But I am angry with your brothers, nor shall I be satisfied till I have taken their lives. I listened with astonishment to the words of the fairy and thanked her, as well as I could, for the great obligation she had conferred on me. But, lady, said I to her, I must entreat you to pardon my brothers, for although I have the greatest reason to complain of their conduct, yet I am not so cruel as to wish their ruin. I elated her instantly. Fly after these ungrateful wretches. Oh, no, that's a skip line again. I really need to follow along with my finger, it seems, because it's well off. Book in one hand, mark in the other. I must entreat your pardon, my brothers, for although I have the greatest reason to complain of their conduct, yet I am not so cruel to wish their ruin. I elated her what I had done for each of them. My story only increased her anger. I must instantly fly after these ungrateful wretches, cried she, and bring them to a just punishment. I will destroy their vessel and sink them to the bottom of the sea. No, beautiful lady, replied I, for heaven's sake, moderate your indignation and do not execute so dreadful a design. Remember, they are still my brothers, and that we are bound to return good for evil. I appeased the fairy by these words, and so soon as I had pronounced them, she transported me in an instant from the island where we were to the top of my own house, which was terraced. She then disappeared. I descended, opened the doors, and took up the 3,000 sequins which I had hidden. I afterwards repaired to my shop, opened it, and received the congratulations of the merchants in the neighborhood on my safe return. When I went home, I perceived these two black dogs, which came towards me fawning. I could not imagine what this meant, but the fairy, who soon appeared, satisfied my curiosity. My dear husband, said she, be not surprised at seeing these two dogs in your house. They are your brothers. My blood ran cold on hearing this, and I inquired by what power they had been transformed into their present shape. It is I, replied the fairy, who have done it. At least it is one of my... sisters, to whom I gave the commission, and she also sunk their ship. You will lose the merchandise it contains, but I shall recompense you in some way. As to your brothers, I have condemned them to remain under this form for 10 years as a punishment for their perfidy. Perfidy? I don't know. It is perfidy. I really just need the tab straight to the dictionary. Mary. I like Mary. Sure. Dark. Huh. Perfidy. The quality or state of being faithless or disloyal. Treachery. An act or instance of disloyalty. So, treachery. Betrayal. We're almost done with this part. And after informing me what I might hear of her, she disappeared. 10 years are now completed, and I am traveling in search of her. As I was passing this way, I met this merchant and the good old man who was leading his hind, and here I tarried. This, O Prince of the Genie, is my history. Does it not appear to you most marvelous? Yes, replied the Genie. I confess it is wonderful, and therefore I remit the 2/3 of the merchant's punishment. When the second old man had finished his story, the third began by asking the Genie, as the others had done, if he would forgive the remaining third of the merchant's crime, provided this third history surpassed the other two in the singularity and marvelousness of its events. The Genie repeated his former promise. The third old man related his story to the Genie, but it has not yet come to my knowledge. I cannot repeat it, but I know it was so much beyond the others in the variety and wonderful adventures it contained that the Genie was astonished. He had no sooner heard the conclusion than he said, I grant thee the remaining third part of the merchant's pardon, and he ought to be greatly obliged to all of you for having, by telling your histories, freed him from his dangerous position. But for this aid, he would not now have been in this world. Having said this, he disappeared with the great joy of the whole party. The merchant did not omit to bestow many thanks upon his liberators. They rejoiced with him at his safety, and then bidding him adieu, each went his separate way. The merchant returned home to his wife and children, and spent the remainder of his day with them in peace. But, sir, added Scheherazade, however wonderful those tales which I have related to your majesty may be, they are not equal to that of the fisherman. Dinarzade, observing that the Sultan made no answer, said, Since there is still some time, my sister, pray tell this history. The Sultan, I hope, will not object to it. Shahryar consented to the proposal. Scheherazade went on as follows. It's interesting in these early stories how Scheherazade makes these shows of life and death situations. The position of power being undermined by something magical or an instance of luck, be it whether it's a chance encounter or by the grace of someone else's good. I think part of how Scheherazade ultimately escapes the death penalty over her head is by slowly making Shahryar see the foolishness of how he's acting by telling all these tales where the person who tries to murder is served by a good force, a good, powerful force. You can already see parallels between tales being told and Shahrazad's actual existence. Her sister is filling in that role of the mystical element that comes to save her. Because if it wasn't for the sister's coaxing, prodding of Shahryar's curiosity, she would have died the first night. She would have died the second night. So it's thanks to that first idea she had with her sister of supplanting her in the palace as a point of comfort. Shahrazad continues to survive. I think it's just a very cool story. Very masterful work in the way it's overlaid and weaved together. Slightly confusing on those first 2 pages, though, I will admit. Thankfully, we are in the middle of it and now understand it mildly. And we only have more than 600 pages to go, so this one is quite large. Huh. The history of the fisherman. Here once lived, sir, a fisherman who was old and feeble and so poor that he could barely obtain food for himself, for the wife and 3 children who made up his family. He went out very early every morning to his work, and he made it an absolute rule that he would throw his nets only 4 times a day. One morning he set out before the moon had set. When he had got to the seashore, he undressed himself and threw his nets. In drawing them to land, he felt them drag heavily and began to imagine he should have an excellent haul. I lost my line again. At which he was much pleased. But on pulling up the nets, he found that instead of a fish, he had only caught the carcass of an ass. He was much vexed and afflicted at having made so bad a haul. Oh, I guess another note of the overlay is that there's storytelling within the storytelling. It's, don't know how deep the hole goes. I think there is at some point a triple, storytelling going on. Shahrazad telling a story of a person telling a story of a person telling a story. I don't know for certain if we do get there, and it is that many. It'll be amusing. Could always look it up, but fun in that. Like looking up a synopsis of a movie before you watch it. Oh. I don't know how much longer I have in me tonight. I may call it at the 2-hour mark, sadly. Oh, yeah, I'm tired. I don't know where it came from. But we'll finish this story and we'll see how I feel after that. When he had mended his nets, which the weight of the ass had torn in many places, he cast them a second time into the sea. He again found considerable resistance in drawing them up, and again he thought they were filled with fish. But great was his disappointment when he discovered only a large basket, filled with sand and mud. "Oh, fortune!" he exclaimed with a melancholy voice, and in the greatest distress. "Cease to be angry with me. Persecute not an unfortunate being who supplicates thee." To spare him. I came from home to seek for life, and thou threatenest me with death. I have no other trade by which I can subsist, and even with all my toil, I can hardly supply the most pressing wants of my family. But I am wrong to complain of thee, that takest a pleasure in deluding the virtuous, and leavest good men in obscurity, while thou favorest the wicked, and exaltest those who possess no virtue to recommend them. Having thus vented his complaints, he angrily threw the basket aside, and, washing his nets from the mud and slime, he threw them a third time. He brought up only stones, shells, and filth. It is impossible to describe his despair, which now almost deprived him of his senses. But the day now began to break, and like a good Mussulman, he did not neglect his prayers, to which he added the following supplication. Thou knowest, O Lord, that I throw my nets only 4 times a day. 3 times have I thrown them into the sea without any profit for my labor. 1 more cast alone remains, and I entreat thee to render the sea favorable, as thou formerly didst to Moses. When the fisherman had finished his prayer, he threw his nets for the 4th time. Again he supposed he had caught a great quantity of fish, as they were just as heavy as before. He nevertheless found none, but discovered a vase of yellow copper, which seemed from its weight to be filled with something, and he observed that it was shut up and stoppered with lead, of which there is no impression of a seal. I will sell this to a founder, said he, joyfully, and with the money I shall get for it, I will purchase a measure of corn. That's an interesting line. That has to be a translation thing, because there's no way he knew what corn was when this book was written, because it's an old world book, and corn's from the Americas. Fairly certain that this book takes place before that. Could be wrong. Something tells me that 1001 Nights was written before 1492. It bothers me slightly. It bothers me because I don't know. He examined the vase on all sides and now shook it, to judge of its contents by the sound. He could hear nothing, and this, together with the impression of the seal of the lead, made him think it was filled with something valuable. To decide the question, he took his knife to cut it open, without much difficulty. He directly turned the top downwards and was much surprised to find that nothing came out. He set it down before him, and while he watched it closely, there issued from it so thick a smoke that he was obliged to step back a few paces. This smoke by degrees rose almost to the clouds and spread itself over the sea and land, appearing like a thick fog. The fisherman, as may easily be imagined, was much surprised at this sight. When the smoke had all come out from the vase, it again collected itself and became a solid body, taking the shape of a genie. Twice as large as any of the giants. At that appearance of this huge monster, the fisherman wished to run away, but his fear was so great he was unable to move. Solomon, Solomon, cried the genie, great prophet of Allah, pardon, I beseech thee. I will never more oppose thy will, but will disobey all thy commands. The fisherman had no sooner heard these words spoken by the genie than he regained his courage and said, Proud spirit, what is this thou sayest? Solomon, the prophet of the Most High, has been dead more than 800 years. Tell me then thy history, and wherefore thou hast been shut up in this vase. To this the genie, looking disdainfully at the fisherman, answered, Speak more civilly. Thou art very bold to call me a proud spirit. Perhaps then, returned the fisherman, it will be more civil to call thee a bird of good omen. I tell thee, said the genie, speak to me more civilly before I kill thee. And for that, Well, for what reason, pray, wouldest thou kill me? Asked the fisherman. Hast thou already forgotten that I have set thee at liberty? I remember it very well, returned the genie, but that shall not prevent me destroying thee. I will only grant thee one favor. And what is that? Asked the fisherman. It is, replied the genie, to permit thee to choose thy manner of death. But in what, resumed the other, have I offended thee? Is it thus thou dost recompense me for the good service I have done thee? I cannot treat thee otherwise, said the genie, and to convince thee of it, attend to my history. Yeah, I thought it was going to take longer to get to this point, but we are reading a storyteller telling a story that now has another storyteller in it. No, it's an extra one, isn't it? Because she's recounting the tale of the fisherman. The fisherman is now recounting the tale of the genie. I am one of those spirits who rebelled against the sovereignty of Allah. All the other genii acknowledged the great Solomon, the prophet of God, and submitted to him. Zakar and myself were the only ones who disdained to humble ourselves. In revenge for my contumacy. Know that word. This is great for my vocabulary. I'm gonna forget what perfidy means, but contumacy. Contumacy. I don't like that. There's a few. I can say contumacy. Contumacy. Stubborn resistance to authority. Oh, obstinance? Mm-hmm. In revenge for my contumacy, this powerful monarch charged Asaph, the son of Barakia, his first minister, to come and seize me. This was done, and Asaph captured me and brought me by force before the throne of the king, his master. Solomon, the son of David, commanded me to quit my mode of life, acknowledge his authority, and submit to his laws. I haughtily refused to obey him, and exposed myself to his resentment rather than take the oath of fidelity and submission which he required of me. In order, therefore, to punish me, he confined me in this copper vase, and to prevent my forcing my way out, he put upon a leaden cover the impression of a seal, on which the great name of Allah is engraven. Thereupon he gave the vase to one of those genii who obeyed him, and ordered the spirit to throw me into the sea, which, to my great sorrow, was done directly. During the first period of my captivity, I swore that if any man delivered me before the first 100 years were past, I would make him rich even after his death. The time elapsed, and no one released me. During the 2nd century, I swore that if anyone set me free, I would discover to him all the treasures of the earth. Still no help came. During the 3rd, I promised to make my deliverer a most powerful monarch, to be always at his command, and to grant him every day any 3 requests he chose to make. This age, like the former, passed away, and I remained in bondage. Enraged at the last to be so long a prisoner, I swore that I would without mercy kill the person who should release me, and that only favor I would grant him should be the choice of what manner of death he preferred. Since therefore thou hast come here today, and hast delivered me, fix upon whatever kind of death thou wilt. The fisherman was much grieved at this speech. How unfortunate, he exclaimed. I am to come here and to render so great a service to such an ungrateful creature. Consider, I entreat thee, thy injustice, and revoke thine unreasonable oath. Pardon me, and Allah will in like manner pardon thee. If thou wilt generously suffer me to live, he will defend thee from all attempts that will be made against my life. No, answered the genie. Thy death is inevitable, determined only how I shall kill thee. The fisherman was in great distress at finding the genie thus resolved on his death, not so much on his own account as on that of his 3 children, for he anticipated with anguish the wretched state to which his death would reduce them. He still endeavored to appease the genie. Alas, he cried, have pity on me. In consideration of what I have done for thee, I have already told thee, replied the genie, that it is not for that very reason I am obliged to take thy life. It is very strange, cried the fisherman. Oh, lost my spot. It is very strange, cried the fisherman, that thou art determined to return evil for good. The proverb says that he who does what is good to him that does not deserve it is always ill rewarded. I did think, I own, that it was false, because nothing is more contrary to reason and the rights of society, yet I find it too cruelly true. Make haste. Let us lose no time, cried the genie. Thy arguments will not alter my resolution. Make haste, and tell me how thou wilt die. Necessity is the spur of invention, and the fisherman thought of a stratagem. Since then, said he, I cannot escape death, I submit to the will of God, but before graven upon the seal of the prophet Solomon, the son of David, to answer me truly a question I am going to put to thee. When the genie, that he should be compelled to answer positively, he trembled, and said to the fisherman, Ask what thou wilt, and make haste. So soon as the genie had promised to speak the truth, the fisherman said to him, I wish to know whether thou really wert in that vase. Darest thou swear in by the great name of Allah? Yes, answered the genie. I do swear by the great name of Allah that I most certainly was there. In truth, replied the fisherman, I cannot believe thee. This vase contained one of thy feet, how then can it hold thy whole body? I swear to thee, notwithstanding, replied the monster, that I was there just as thou seest me. Wilt thou not believe me after the solemn oath I have taken? No, truly, retorted the fisherman. I shall not believe thee unless I see it. Immediately the form of the genie began to change into smoke, and to extend itself as before over both the shore and the sea, and then collecting itself it began to enter the vase, and continued to do so with slow and equal motion, till nothing remained without. A voice immediately issued forth, saying, Now, thou unbelieving fisherman, art thou convinced now that I am in the vase? Instead of answering the genie, the fisherman took the leaden cover and clapped it on the vase. Genie, he cried, it is now thy turn to ask pardon and choose what sort of death is most agreeable to thee. But no, it is better that I should throw thee again into the sea, and I will build on the very spot where thou art cast a house upon the shore, in which I will live, to warn all fishermen that shall come to throw their nets, not to fish up so wicked a genie as thou art, that takest an oath to kill him who shall set thee at liberty. At this insulting speech, the enraged genie tried his utmost to get out of the vase, but in vain. for the impression of the seal of Solomon the prophet, the son of David, prevented him. Knowing then that the fisherman had advantage over him, he began to conceal his rage. "Take heed," said he in a softened tone. "Take heed what thou doest, O fisherman. Whatever I said was merely in jest, and thou shouldest not take it seriously." "O Genie," answered the fisherman, "thou who wert a moment ago the greatest of all the genii, art now the most insignificant, and suppose not that thy flattering speeches will avail thee anything. Thou shalt assuredly return to the sea, and if thou hast passed so much time there as thou hast asserted, thou mayest as well remain till the day of judgment. I entreated thee in the name of God not to take my life, and as thou hast rejected my prayers, I ought to reject thine likewise." The genie tried every argument to move the fisherman's pity, but in vain. "I conjure thee to open the vase," said he. "If thou givest me my liberty again, thou shalt have reason to be satisfied with my gratitude." "Thou art too treacherous for me. I will not trust thee," returned the fisherman. "I should deserve to lose my life were I so foolish as to put it in thine power a second time. For thou wouldst probably treat me as a Greek king treated Duban the physician. I will tell thee the story." The fisherman is now going to recount a story to the genie. Oh man, it's quite the line of story, isn't it? I think I'm going to call it here. I may not have slept as good as I thought I did. I'm glad that I got another story to read. I'm glad that I got music on the stream that is copyright free. We don't have to worry about that. We're still worrying about public domain books, but for now, I think it's okay because these stories are in 1001 Nights, and though this isn't that exactly as most, we'll see. I'm gonna look at something regarding it. Wow. Is as is. Well, I think I will conclude there. And to you, my one viewer, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Hallie, and I will see you again on Monday. I am not going to stream on Friday. I will be away. But back. Tuning in, and see you next time. Press the end stream button fast.